Well, welcome everybody, and good morning to all. Welcome to Arlington, Virginia, and not Washington, D.C. as normal for our 2025 Council on Rail Transportation Winter Meeting. Barley says I have to call the meeting to order, so okay. My name is Matt Dietrich. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Rail Development Commission, and I also have had the privilege and continue to be Vice Chair of the Council on Rail Transportation. We'll see after this meeting. I'm here to help as kind of a master's of ceremonies because unfortunately Marc Williams, the Executive Director of the Texas DOT and Chair of the Council on Rail Transportation, is unable to join in person. And if you're all disappointed at that, imagine how I feel right at this moment. However, he has kindly provided some recorded remarks as chair. So I will now ask Barley to bring up those and go ahead and hit play.
Good morning and welcome to Arlington and the 2025 Council on Rail Transportation Winter Legislative Meeting. I wish I could be there in person with all of you. Unfortunately, we have a lot going on down here in Texas this week. The Texas legislature meets for 140 days every 2 years. Their 89th regular session kicked off just 2 weeks ago on January 14th. TxDOT is already busy responding to transportation-related legislation and to questions about our biennial budget request for the 2026-27 fiscal years. In that budget request, we've asked the Texas legislature for additional funding for rail improvements statewide. I hope to have good news about those additional rail investments to share with you all at our annual meeting later this year. Today is also the second day of our 2025 Texas Transportation Forum, a large gathering of TxDOT leaders and our federal, state, and local partners to discuss important transportation issues as both Congress and our state legislature begin their work. Finally, as if that wasn't enough, our Transportation Commission has its first monthly meeting of the year tomorrow. I think my week would have been a little quieter if I had snuck away to be with you all there in Arlington, and I miss being there. I'd like to spend a little time catching you up, however, on what the Council on Rail has been doing since we last met and what we have on the agenda for this spring and summer. First, I'd like to once again thank everyone who joined us in Norfolk this past fall at the 2024 Council on Rail annual meeting. Your presence and contributions greatly enriched the discussions during the meeting. Since October, the AASHTO Council on Rail has been heavily focused on the development of its reauthorization white paper. Staff completed a survey and had 4 subsequent member calls focused on developing the Council's draft reauthorization recommendations. These recommendations include support for reauthorization of the federal rail programs that were included in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and where applicable, funding at no less than the levels authorized for fiscal years 2022 through 2026. The Council is finalizing additional policy issues to recommend legislative solutions to help state DOTs enhance opportunities for managing our rail programs. The Council has also been actively communicating its priorities for the committee white papers that were presented at the Transportation Policy Forum earlier this fall. For example, recommendations were included to include reauthorization of the Section 130 grant program in the Safety Committee's white paper. The Council is finalizing draft recommendations for further consideration and discussion at the Transportation Policy Forum at the AASHTO Washington briefing next week, where I hope to see many of you all. The principles will be finalized by the AASHTO Board of Directors later this fall, just in time for the House and Senate committees to develop reauthorization legislation before the expiration of the IIJA. A new Congress and a new administration are getting underway. Even as we aim our sights toward reauthorization, AASHTO member agencies and our federal partners at FHWA and FRA have work to do. We have grants to execute and projects to deliver that have been funded by formulas or grants over the past few years that our communities can reap the benefits of the IIJA. We also must maintain our focus on roadway and railroad safety to decrease transportation-related fatalities and injuries. In further support of these important safety initiatives, AASHTO has continued to participate in the FHWA State and Railroad Coordination Community of Interest, as well as FRA's Rail Safety Advisory Committee. And of course, we have continued our long-standing partnership and support for the States for Passenger Rail Coalition, Operation Lifesaver, State Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee, Next Generation Equipment Corridor, Federal Railroad Administration, and the Federal Highway Administration. Today's agenda offers engaging sessions, including keynotes from FRA Executive Director Les Dingy and other important rail leaders at the federal level. FRA leaders from across the agency will discuss what is on the horizon, and another FRA panel later on will focus on various safety and environmental topics. Surface Transportation Board Chairman Robert Primus will provide a keynote address, and Amtrak leaders will provide updates on ridership, equipment, and new initiatives. We also have a panel of House and Senate committee staff who will be discussing important legislative topics such as the upcoming reauthorization of surface transportation programs. Finally, we have a partner panel with updates from the American Short Line and Regional Railroad Association, Association of American Railroads, Operation Lifesaver, Association for Innovative Passenger Rail Operations, the Transportation Trades Department, and the Rail Passengers Association. Tomorrow, we will hold the AASHTO Freight States meeting and the States for Passenger Rail Coalition meeting. At 6 p.m. this evening, at the end of today's session, please plan to join everyone for a reception and dinner to network and catch up with colleagues. You can find the location of the event in your program. We really have a great program scheduled for today and tomorrow. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, I think I should have tried harder to sneak away and join you all. I have one last and important note. Our 2025 Council on Rail annual meeting will be held this coming fall in Minneapolis, Minnesota, October 20th through the 23rd. If you've not been to Minneapolis, it's a beautiful city with lots to see and do. So please block your calendars and plan to join us. I promise I've got mine blocked already. Thank you again for attending our winter meeting. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Matt Dietrich.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Chair Williams. So next up, we have Jim Tymon, Executive Director of AASHTO. I'm pleased to welcome him to the meeting. As AASHTO Executive Director, there's a lot of Executive Directors today. Michael, you're Executive Director too, right? All right. He oversees a staff of 130 professionals who support their members in connecting America with the transportation system of today and tomorrow. Prior to his appointment, Jim was AASHTO's Chief Operating Officer and Director of Policy and Management from 2013 to 2018, working closely with state DOTs in the development of AASHTO's transportation policy positions and overseeing the monitoring of legislation, administrative, and regulatory activities related to transportation. As AASHTO's COO, Jim also oversaw the management of the association's internal operations. Jim also previously served as a staff director of the Highways and Transit Subcommittee of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Jim, you know, when you read these bios, you really feel like you haven't done anything in your professional life. Jim was the committee's lead staffer for the development of MAP 21, the Surface Transportation Bill signed into law in 2012, and Safety Lou, the Surface Transportation Bill that was signed into law in 2005. Jim also served in the Office of Management and Budget, where he worked as program examiner responsible for overseeing the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So please join me in welcoming Jim.
Thank you, Matt. I think that just shows that we got to shorten the bios. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that you haven't done anything. But I will agree with you on the executive director title. That's a nice look up there, right? I mean, you got 3 executive directors back to back, and we'll be hearing from one other one later today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for making the trip. How many folks are not from the DMV, from DC? Okay. All right. Do we have any press in the room? I'm not kidding, because that's going to change what I say. You might know it's been a little bit of a crazy 8 days here, hasn't it? I've got this great set of talking points here. Barley, thank you. I mean, honestly, if it was written less than 10 minutes ago, I'm not sure how relevant it is anymore. No, but I will mention a lot of the stuff here, but I did just want to recognize it's a real interesting time here, and I do want to appreciate our partners from USDOT that are participating, because it's been a challenging time, I know, for a lot of the folks that are working in the federal government to be able to figure out kind of how and when they're able to kind of break away during this transitional period. So certainly appreciate their partnership and the ability for them to come over and participate in this important meeting. And thank you all for being here too. I mean, I think, you kind of lucked out. This is a great time to be here because there's so much going on. There's so many things that have been changing over the last 9 days, and it's going to set the platform for what's going to be happening, I think, over the next 4 years. And I think that's important for all of you as you think about how that's going to impact the work that you do on a daily basis back in your states. I do want to thank our sponsor, HDR. Anybody here from HDR? All right, we've got a good group here. Look, we are not able to do what we're able to do from a meeting standpoint without the help of our sponsors. And I just want to take a moment and let's give them a round of applause and thank them. Matt mentioned that I have the pleasure of working with about 140 staff at AASHTO. We are, I think, one of the best trade associations here in the country. And it's amazing the work that we're able to do with only about 130 people. So let me thank just a few of them here that I know are in the room. I see that Shane is here. You all know Shane. I know Barley's in the back, who got me all of my stuff when I got here. Daniel met me there in the lobby to make sure I could figure out where to go. And then Kamasha Hendrickson and Courtney, who are our meeting planners, are also here. Let's give them a round of applause, because they're the ones. They are the ones that do all of the real work. I mean, as another executive director sitting up here probably would agree with me. I mean, it's we get up here to give these speeches, which again today is going to be an interesting one. But really, the work that goes on to make sure that the committee and the council gets all of the work done that they need to do, that's done by the folks that I just mentioned. Also, Susan Howard, I see, is here too. So thank you, Susan, for joining us, our Director of Policy and Government Relations. And Susan has been knee-deep in everything that's been going on here in the last 8 days, between the executive orders that were issued on the 20th and then the spending freeze memo that was issued on Monday. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster for us to try to figure out what's going on. But let me cover that a little bit at the end. As I mentioned, it's an interesting and great time for you all to be here. I got to hear Marc's taped remarks where he was talking a little bit about the work that we're doing here at AASHTO and the fact that we are really setting the foundation for reauthorization. We started that process about a year ago, right, at the Washington briefing. In 2024, we started the process where we identified kind of key issues that we wanted the association to focus on as we started our conversations with Congress and the administration on what we wanted to see for reauthorization for IIJA. Believe it or not, we're more than halfway through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and we want to build on the fact that was really a transformational bill from a federal standpoint and from a surface transportation standpoint. It was truly a surface transportation bill. It wasn't just a highway bill. It wasn't just a highway and transit bill. There was a significant rail component, which we certainly celebrated as an association, because we take the view that this is a holistic transportation network. It includes all the modes of transportation. So it's great that we saw Congress and the federal government really look at that piece of legislation from that perspective. We are going to advocate that the next bill looks the same way, that it deals with transportation as a whole. It includes rail, it includes transit, it includes highway, it includes both freight and passenger rail issues, so that we can build on the successes that we've seen in IIJA. But it's going to be a challenge, right? We're going to need to be able to make the case for why Congress should come to the table and invest the same way that they did in IIJA. We saw a huge increase in funding on the rail side, right? I think passenger rail was like 600% increase when compared to the previous baseline levels. On the highway side, it was a little bit smaller. On the formula side, we got about a 25% increase. Transit saw a bigger increase than that. But it's still a foundation for us to be able to go to Congress and work with this administration to make the case that we need those levels of investment in the next bill as well. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, it's still a year and a half away. We have time. But as Marc laid out in his recorded remarks, you all have been at work putting together white papers that we are going to use as part of the AASHTO reauthorization principles. We build out those principles that we'll be able to put in front of the board of directors later this year at our annual meeting in Salt Lake City. And then that will be what we take up to the Hill and what we take over to the administration to tell them that we want to see in this next bill. So this really is kind of this bottom-up approach where we're asking all of the committees and councils to come together, let us know what they want to see in the next bill. We'll continue to work through that with the Transportation Policy Forum. We've got a meeting next week as part of the Washington briefing where TPF will get together and we'll talk through the modal and the council committee papers that have been put together. And then again, we'll work towards this process where the board will actually consider a set of resolutions that we hope that they'll adopt at the annual meeting in Salt Lake City this November. One of the things that is going to be, as I said, important for us as we push towards reauthorization is being able to make the case for why we need these dollars. And Garrett Euclideo, from the commissioner from Connecticut DOT, is this year's AASHTO president. And as part of his role as president, he gets to pick some emphasis areas for the association to really focus on. One of them is really building on the successes of IIJA and being able to tell the story for why Congress and the administration should support a similar level of funding in the next bill. So we're going to be working throughout the year to be able to identify those success stories, be able to encourage all of you and us at AASHTO to be able to talk about where we've taken money from IIJA, invested it in projects and programs, and proven out to be successful. So we're going to start with working with individual committees and councils to identify some of those specific successes. One of the things that we found is that we in transportation, and especially engineers, we have engineers in the room? Only a few, that's good. We're really bad about talking about our successes, aren't we? We've got so much on our plate, we tend to just kind of get the job done and then move on to the next thing and not necessarily celebrate the fact that we got this great thing done. So in order for us to be able to go up to the Hill and say, hey, give us this amount of money for passenger rail or this amount of money for freight rail in the next bill, we need to be able to go back and say, what did we do well with the last bill? So we're going to be asking folks, go out and look at what you got through IIJA. Tell us about the great projects that you did so that we can use those examples to go back up to the Hill and to work with the administration to kind of prove out that these successes are worth investing in moving forward. The second emphasis area that Garrett is focusing on for this year is safety. And you heard Marc mention highway rail grade crossing, and that's a big part of what we're looking at from a safety standpoint from a surface transportation areas. We talk a lot about what we have to do from a highway safety standpoint. We lost about 43,000 people on our nation's roadways in 2022. We've seen a decline for 10 consecutive quarters in the number of fatalities on our roadways, so we're starting to move in the right direction. And one of the things that we're going to try to tie that back to is that 10 consecutive quarter decline actually matches up well with the start of IIJA. So we're going to, again, look for places that we can identify where have states taken funding from IIJA and invested in safety projects, and is that resulting in an improvement in highway safety? So again, trying to find ways to tell the stories of our successes through IIJA so that we can better position ourselves to get a similar level of funding in the next bill. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what's happened in the last 8 days. So obviously, new administration comes in. They've got an opportunity to set their priorities. I think we all knew that this administration was going to come in with a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, and they were going to hit the ground running on day one. And we certainly saw that on day one. From a transportation standpoint, it created some confusion because there were some broad-based executive orders that were put out there that I think weren't necessarily intended to impact a lot of the transportation programs that we work in. But I think in the initial hours that those executive orders came out, there was some concern across a lot of departments in the federal government of they want to make sure that if they have questions as to whether or not the EO whether or not a particular EO is going to apply to their program, they assume that it did. So you saw some decisions that were made to say, well, we're going to be conservative here. And for example, on the federal aid highway side, they froze some of the grant funding formulas that would go out to states. Highway program works in a reimbursable way. States do the work. And then essentially they submit to be reimbursed from the federal government after the work has been done and the states have paid for it. Well, FHWA shut that program down, that process down, and states were kind of left holding the bag for about a day as to whether or not they were going to get reimbursed from the federal government. Again, more because of the confusion associated as to what applied to the executive order and what didn't. So they were able to work through that. We worked very closely with the handful of political staff that were over there in the first couple of days, as well as the career staff. And despite about a 3 or 4 hour delay, we were able to work through those things and free up some of those dollars and the process return back to normal. I don't think that's all that unusual. I think that, especially on that first day, you've only got a handful of political appointees in. You're getting all this information out from the White House. And the career staff don't necessarily have places that they can go to get their questions answered immediately. We've seen an improvement in that really just even in the last week as more and more people are getting put into positions over at USDOT. I think the communication there between the White House, OMB, and the department, and then the career staff at the department has improved, and we're getting more consistent messaging. And then Monday evening, the OMB comes out with their memo that says we're going to freeze all spending. Obviously put a lot of us into a panic. What does that mean for our programs? What does that mean for a lot of other programs? We saw initial interpretations from that said all the transportation programs are going to have a freeze. Again, especially on the highway side where it's a reimbursable program where the states have gone out and paid for the work and are seeking to be reimbursed on a daily basis. That put us, we were a little uneasy about that. But again, it took us about 8 hours to kind of work out the differences between, I guess, what the initial interpretation was between where we are right now, which is all indication is that it's a much narrower scope that the spending freeze is going to apply to compared to what we thought it was Monday evening. And you saw that throughout the day a little bit yesterday, right? You saw the memo came out Monday night. I think there was a lot of concern and panic that it was across the board. White House had their first press briefing yesterday around 1, and I think they led with a statement that said, actually, this isn't going to apply to everybody. It's only meant to apply to the programs that are impacted by the executive orders. And then you saw a revised Q&A document that came out from OMB that, again, defined a more narrower scope of the programs that were affected. There's still some concerns out there, and we're still working through and trying to get the messaging right and the intent from folks at OMB and the White House and USDOT. But we do feel a lot better than we did I would say 36 hours ago when we first saw the memo. So we'll continue to work in that manner on all of your behalf to make sure that the state DOT priorities are recognized. One of the things that we found, we'll reach out and we'll ask, we'll reach out to folks at US DOT or even new folks at the White House or OMB and point out how some of these programs work. And they'll say, oh, well, we didn't mean it to impact that. So we do find we're doing a little bit of education as well, which is, again, I think normal in any administration, change in administration, and we're going to continue to do that. The good news is the lines of communication have been open from day one. Whenever we've had concerns or problems with things, we've reached out. There's been somebody on the other end of the line to answer the phone and to talk to us. The career staff has been great in providing us reassurances and kind of talking through the challenges that we've had. And then when they've had, or when they haven't been able to give us the answers that we need, they've been able to point us to the direction that we needed to go from a political standpoint, who we needed to talk to. So we'll continue to do that work. I know it seems a little crazy now. I do hope that it kind of settles down here in the next several weeks. And again, I think we'll have more for you for the folks that come back for the Washington briefing next week. So thank you for having me. You guys are off to a great start. Look forward to seeing some of you here over the next few days. Thank you.